So, episode by episode is a new feature that I'm doing. This is only the second video. The first one was on Buffy Season 1. This one's going to be on Buffy Season 2. And I've figured out what I'm going to do with it. So, I'm going to go episode by episode. Brief thoughts of every single episode of every single season of a certain show. So, I'm going to do them all. So, we're going to continue with Buffy. Once that's done, I'll do a top 10 worst episode list, or bottom 10, worst 10, top 10 best episodes, and then we'll move on to another show, and what that show will be, I'll hand over to the people who are watching to decide. So there'll be 4 or 5 shows selected. You guys get to choose which one it is. I don't know how that's going to work yet. Got a little while to think about it. But that's the plan going forward. But for now, let's go with episode by episode for the first half of Buffy Season 2.
Put the bunny back in the box.
So for shows that are 22 episodes in length for the season, such as Buffy, I'm going to split the videos into 2, otherwise they're going to be very, very long videos. So we're going to do 11 episodes here, the next one will be the following 11 episodes, and they're the ones that I'm really looking forward to, because that's when Buffy the Vampire Slayer really kicked into high gear for me. But for now, let's begin with the first 11, starting with When She Was Bad, which... So, Season 2 of Buffy, actually, just to give some brief thoughts on that. I think, as I say, the second half is very, very strong. The second half is really good, whereas the first half has its moments. It has some very good moments in. It's a definite improvement over Season 1, but there are quite a few episodes where it still feels like we're in Season 1 mode. Where it still feels like the show's finding its feet, where it's figuring out what it wants to do, and as a result, there are some episodes that are less than stellar. And When She Was Bad is one of them. It's not the best introduction to Season 2 of Buffy. It's interesting what they've done, so I think that, yeah, Buffy should have some kind of turmoil to deal with. Like, she went through some horrible things at the end of Season 1, like she literally died, for example. And it's good that they're not just sweeping that under the carpet. It's not something that's just been forgotten about. She's very much dealing with what's going on, but the way it's done, it's not great. It's not the best use of it. While I say I understand that Buffy's acting out, why she's acting not the sort of Buffy that we normally know her to be, she seems to go a little bit too far over. She just becomes overly nasty, and I'm not sure that's the best way to deal with what she went through. It just seems very... I mean, it is out of character. It's meant to be out of character, but it seems too much out of character for Buffy to do the things that she's doing, and to treat her friends the way she's treating them. It doesn't make any kind of logical sense for her to be doing that. And yeah, this is an episode that I just really, really struggle with. It's not one of my favourites. There's certain moments I like, such as the wall, the ice cream sequence with Xander and Willow. That's really nice. And of course, the Buffy dance sequence, which has to be the best moment that Nicholas Brennan has ever had in his life. Oh, what a dance. But yeah, on the whole, this is an episode that missed the mark for me in more ways than it hit them. The next episode was Some Assembly Required, and this was a fun one. It was. The actual premise of it is not overly original, sort of high school guys trying to create a girl. I mean, it's weird science, just without the whole computer aspect to it. And for how they did it, it's a bit glossed over. Like, is it that easy to create a girl, really, for 2 high school students? Bit odd. But it can overlook it because it's a lot of fun. And throwing Cordelia into the mix as well, and I love the Cordelia and Angel moments in this one. They're just fun, and a nice little setup for what's to come with Angel. It's just an episode that feels very much like Buffy, like an actual Buffy story. The cast all used very well. It's funny, it's serious when it needs to be. Yeah, just a really fun episode. As is School Hard, which is one of the best episodes still. It's still an episode that every time I rewatch it, I love it equally. And that's mostly because we get Spike and Drusilla. 2 of the best villains that this show's ever had and ever will have. Both of them are just so good. And what I like about Spike and Drusilla is that the 2 of them perfectly encapsulate Buffy, particularly Spike. Like, he's a bad guy, but he's funny. He's very, very evil, but he's likable. He balances the 2 extremely well, and Drusilla's just plain nuts, and Juliet Landau just plays her incredibly well. She's just captivating to watch. And it doesn't seem to be much time of these 2 easing themselves in. Like, they're just straight in the mix of it, and they're instantly memorable right from the off, and they just are so good villains, such good villains. And the rest of the episode's really good as well. I love the whole thing with Joyce and Buffy. Like, it deals with typical teenage problems, while not so typical teenage problems at the same time. It blends that all together absolutely seamlessly. And yeah, this for me is Buffy. This is a prime example of what Buffy the Vampire Slayer should be, and what it goes on to be as well. School Hard, absolutely fantastic episode. It's just a shame that it was followed by Inca Mummy Girl. It's 3 for 3 now on Xander episodes not being that good. And this one, it's silly, it's dull. There's not even a lot I can say about Inca Mummy Girl. It's the guest star, she's not overly intriguing in this. There's not a great deal to her. The whole premise of it just seems a little bit hokey. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this one at all, and it's very telling that I'm just kind of skimming over it a little bit because there's really not a lot to say. It's not memorable in any way. It's just another dud episode, and it's just a real shame that this is the third Xander-centric episode, and it's the third one that's also a bit crap. Things don't improve too much with Reptile Boy either. Another one, I just hate the title of it. It's so on the nose, just Reptile Boy. I hate that title. And yeah, the episode has some funny moments, like I enjoy Xander and Angel, everybody just running into the frat house to try and save them, and whenever you get Xander and Angel together, it didn't happen enough for my liking, but the two characters have such disdain for each other that they're just so much fun to watch, and they really are here, so this does have its moments. Buffy and Cordelia are another pairing I think that really works. It should have been utilised more because they're great fun together, so there's a lot of bits here that work, but overall the story's very silly. The actual reptile itself just looks awful. Not the worst Buffy's done, but yeah, nowhere near the best. Just another forgettable episode, really. It's kind of 2 on the bounce for Season 2, and this is what I mean about it being a bit like Season 1, where it's just very hit and miss. And the first half of Season 2 very much is like that for me, and we've just seen this now. School Hard was great, and then 2 episodes follow that are very, very subpar. But to counter that, we're following it with a brilliant episode, which is Halloween, which I think is actually the first episode of Buffy that I actually watched. It's kind of hard to remember because it was a long time ago. Too long. But I remember watching this episode and then going back to watch the old ones, like having to watch it from the beginning again. And Halloween was the episode that drew me in because it's so much fun. And there's one moment in particular that I absolutely love, and it still makes me laugh to the point where it hurts sometimes. It really makes me laugh that much. Is Ghost Willow appearing behind Giles and him throwing the papers up into the air. It's just such a beautifully comedic moment that's just executed absolutely perfectly. And the rest of the episode's amazing as well. We get Ethan Rayne thrown into this, who's just a really intriguing character, and we'll come to him in a little bit when it comes to Giles. But yeah, so much about this works. Just the whole concept of Halloween being a time where demons take the day off is just... It's a really Buffy thing to do. It's a really Buffy sort of spin on something, to just be like, no, this is too commercial for us, we're going to sit this one out. And of course, it says a lot about Spike, that he's like, no, screw that, we're going to go all in. And I just love the concept of the people turning into their costumes. It's very simple, but yet very, very effective. Xander as the military guy is great fun. Buffy just becoming the little girly girl Buffy shows how great Sarah Michelle Gellar is. She performs both of them brilliantly, but it's such a contrast to Buffy. And yeah, I really, really like this episode. Lie to Me is an episode I really like, actually. It's a very good episode, and it helps that the character of Ford is a really kind of intriguing character. It's quite dark what this guy's going through, and he's the villainous character here, like he's definitely a villain, but at the same time, there's enough layers to him to make you kind of understand why he's doing the things that he's doing. It makes sense. You completely get that this is the thing that he thinks he can do. This is the only thing he thinks he can do to save himself. And it's nice as well that he's got a personal tie to Buffy because, well, it makes it personal for her. It makes it something that it's not just a random guest star of the week, it's somebody she's attached to. Somebody that when she's betrayed by him, she's visibly hurt by it. But again, it's not like he's brushed aside as a villain. There's a lot of grey area to this character and to the episode as a result, and it's not shied away from, which is something that I really, really liked. And it's also got the great moment of Angel dressing up like the stereotypical vampires, the two people next to each other. Really makes me laugh. But yeah, a solid episode that just shows that Buffy isn't afraid to tackle some really serious things. And this is an episode that does have some really funny moments in it, but it's very dark in places too. And again, this show's really good at mixing those two things, and this is a prime example of it. Very serious subject matter, treated with respect, sort of handled sort of in an adult way, but at the same time it allows itself to have these little moments of humour sprinkled in. Like, you can really see that Buffy is coming into its own as a show at this point. The Dark Age it's always been a bit of a mixed bag for me. On the one hand, it's a great episode for Giles, because up to this point, there's been little hints here and there that there's something dark about Giles, that he's not just the stiff upper lip British librarian that we've seen, that there's something in his past. There's a few little things here and there, and this really goes all in. And it has an effect on him as well. Jenny Callender's used really well, Ethan's used really well again. But there's just something about the plot, just the pacing of it, and the way it's all structured that just doesn't quite land for me. It is nice that we get to explore Giles as a character, because it's needed to be done up to this point, but I just wish it had been handled a little bit better. The episode's not as effective as I think it should be. Like, this is a big episode for a number of reasons, but at the same time, it doesn't really feel like it. It doesn't feel like there's any real lasting effects. Yeah, Giles and Jenny's relationship is affected by it, but this just, I don't know, it just kind of needed to feel a bit bigger for me. It just kind of meanders along a little bit, and what we get is interesting, but it's not exceptional. And this just needed to be a huge episode, and maybe it's just me, that it just never really felt like the Dark Age really nailed it for me. I'm not saying it's a bad episode at all. It's certainly one that I enjoy watching, but it's never one that I really look forward to. If I'm ever going to pick out an episode of Buffy to go back and watch, this is never anywhere near the top of my list. It's one that I'll only watch as part of a rewatch. So yeah, it's just a kind of middle of the road episode for me that should have been a lot more. What's My Line? Part 1 and 2. The first episode, the first part of this is so slow. So very slow. I don't really feel that this should have been 2 episodes, but again, at the same time, I guess it had to be, because it gives us Kendra. Like, Kendra comes into this as a result of Prophecy Girl, the result of Buffy dying. She's the new Slayer. But it feels like until part 2, things don't really get going. It's so much setup, it's so much build-up, that the first 45 minutes just, as I say, they drag on. Like, the ice skating sequence is nice, like, it's sweet, but it goes on for too long. Buffy and Angel become almost sickening at this point. Like, obviously something bad's going to happen at some point very soon, but this is the point where they're just happy together. And Buffy is a show, like, we love the horrible moments. We love the moments where the characters are put through the ringer, and when they're perfectly happy, pardon the pun on that one, but when they are perfectly happy, the show is less interesting. And it very much is for the first part of this. There are some nice moments, but yeah, it really takes until episode 2 for this one to really get going. As a whole, though, there are a lot of things to like. Oz and Willow's little budding relationship here is really sweet. Xander and Cordelia, this is the beginning of them as well, so there's a lot that happens. But yeah, the second part is much, much stronger than the first for me. They are good episodes for Spike and Drusilla. The assassins coming after everybody are great. The bug guy is really, really creepy. The ending, sort of Spike ending up sort of buried under everything and Drusilla rising up at full power again. It's just one of those moments that I'll always remember. It's a stunning looking sequence. Just Drusilla carrying Spike out. So What's My Line, the 2-parter, has a lot going for it. It has a lot of good moments, but as I say, it can be very, very slow, and it takes quite a long time to finally get going. But when it does, it's great. So the last episode for this video is Ted, and I don't like Ted. I don't like the episode at all. I never have done. I mean, John Ritter is very good. Like, he's very good at Ted. He does what he needs to do, but the actual episode itself, there's so much about it that just doesn't really work. I mean, we just have this guy come in as Joyce's boyfriend, and so as Buffy goes on, he would have been gradually introduced over time, but here just he's thrown right into the mix, and all of a sudden he's pretty much part of the family, and it's so quick. It's such a quick introduction for him that it just feels a little bit off. And everything about the police investigating Buffy for killing him, it's been a while since I've seen it, so do correct me, but is that addressed afterwards, that when he comes back and they found out he's a robot? Like, do the police know that? Is Buffy just off the hook? Because as far as they're concerned, Ted's still dead, right? I say that might be just because I haven't watched this episode in quite some time. It's one that I never have the urge to watch. It's one that I even sometimes try to skip, because it's just, I don't really care for it at all. But just let me know in the comments about that with the whole police situation, because it just sticks out to me as that was never really resolved, and it might have been. And just everything about Ted being a robot just felt very silly. I've never really liked it when this show's done robots, and we get the Buffy bot sort of quite far down the line, and I wasn't a huge fan of how they did that either. It just, I don't know, we all have our own limits of what we can accept when it comes to suspending disbelief, and just the whole robot angle just always was a bit too silly for me, and maybe that's why I didn't particularly like this episode that much. Maybe that's one of the reasons. But yeah, this, again, when I say the Dark Age felt like a big episode, this should have felt like a big episode as well, because Buffy really thinks that she's committed murder, and I don't think that's given quite the weight that it needs to. This is a bit more of a breezy episode. It has its dark moments, and I say John Ritter's very good. He does the comedy and the serious side of it extremely well. But as a whole, this episode just missed the mark for me quite a lot. It's one that, yeah, I just really, really don't care for. So that's the first half of Buffy Season 2 done. The next video will be the second lot of episodes for the second season, and I can't wait to talk about them, because that's where Buffy gets incredible. But I'll save that for the next video, but yeah, I'm very excited. Some of my favourite episodes of Buffy are in the second half of Season 2. And I also want to go watch a couple of them again, because yeah, love those episodes. So that'll be coming next week, so look out for that. Thank you very much for watching, and do let me know in the comments your thoughts on all of these episodes as well. There's some great comments on the first one. People have just listed what they thought of each particular episode, so do the same. same. Let me know. I really want to talk about this show with people. It's why I'm doing the videos. So, yeah, let me know. Hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. You'll be notified of any new Buffy videos that come along. And I say they should be coming at least once a week. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.